Today on Making Energy, the power of Port Fourchon, a critical hub for the U.S. energy sector located at the mouth of Bayou Lafourche.
Our goals are absolutely to get that deeper draft, get authorized to 50 feet, get Fourchon Island up and running, and hopefully have an LNG export terminal so that we, Port Fourchon, and our community and our state can continue to grow and provide for those energy needs.
In this episode, we'll explore expanding energy opportunities at the port and its impact on the local and state economy. We'll also discuss the port's effort to protect the coast and reveal exciting developments and projects on the horizon. Joining us on Making Energy is Chett Chiasson, Port Fourchon's Executive Director. Welcome.
Thank you very much for having me today.
Absolutely. Port Fourchon services over 95% of the Gulf of Mexico's deepwater energy production, guides over 270 large supply vessels through its waters daily, and is the land base for America's first and only deepwater port known as LOOP. As Executive Director, what do you think is the most important thing our audience needs to know about Port Fourchon?
Port Fourchon is an intermodal hub of activity where all the different products, goods, and services, commodities needed to produce American offshore energy comes through via inland barge or a truck and changes modes of transportation to an offshore supply vessel or a helicopter to get to those offshore locations in the U.S. Gulf of Mexico.
So American energy starts right there at Port Fourchon.
Absolutely. A key part of the supply chain for American energy and about 15 to 18% of the nation's oil supply.
Very cool. Louisiana Economic Development is reporting $60 billion in energy and emission reduction capital investments. What does this level of investment mean for the industry at Louisiana ports?
Louisiana's ports in general, not just Port Fourchon, but Louisiana's ports in general, really are the backbone of our Louisiana economy and have such an impact on our national economy as well, and play a critical role in the world markets and the world economy. It is imperative that we continue, as the state of Louisiana is concerned, to invest in our ports, both from capital improvement investments as well as to lower emissions as we continue to be a key cog in the wheel of energy in our country.
And how does that impact the future development at the port with this $60 billion earmarked for emission reduction?
So I can tell you this, we've been working very hard with our customers in terms of looking at opportunities and ways to lower emissions. 2 years ago, the Port Commission itself on our own started working with a company called Sail Plan. We put out 10 emissions monitoring stations in Port Fourchon to collect our own data on our emissions so that we could be prepared for funding opportunities that were out there. And I'm proud to say that our applications for a port-wide emissions reduction plan was submitted with a statewide project plan that included 22 ports from around the state up for the EPA Clean Ports program. That was submitted back in May 28th this year, but I can tell you that state application was for $312 million in total for the entire state plan. Port Fourchon's submittal of that 312 was 102 million of that. And I can tell you the reason for it is because our customers, who are the service companies for the offshore energy industry, have been looking for ways and working with the industry in figuring out ways to reduce that carbon footprint in their role in the supply chain for all of the energy activities that are taking place out of Port Fourchon. So we're very excited about what we think may happen in terms of receiving those funds from the EPA Clean Ports program, and then we can truly get after building those projects that allow us to reduce our emissions.
It's interesting. You talked about the economic development aspect of carbon management, and that's something that we don't hear about enough. You said installing those air monitors was a funding opportunity. Does that mean carbon management could bring jobs to the coast?
Absolutely, it could. I mean, when you think about the whole aspect of carbon capture and sequestration and what that can look like for the future in capturing that carbon, injecting them back into wells, some onshore, but I'm looking at it from an offshore perspective, and those opportunities that could be out there really kind of bringing what we call the shelf, right? Bringing the shelf of the Gulf of Mexico, the shallow water areas of the Gulf, those old fields back to life. It's allowing us to have cleaner air and reduce our carbon emissions and inject all those carbon emissions. It's just a win-win in my book.
So that might surprise people. What are some other key aspects of Port Fourchon you think might surprise our audience?
We're at a depth of minus 27 feet. When you think about ports, you think about water draft is key for all of those. And we have been authorized by Congress to go to 33 feet. So we should start dredging there in the next several months. Hopefully before the end of the year, we're starting to dredge and utilizing all of that material that we dredge, that extra 6 foot of draft, beneficially building new marsh. We plan to build about 800 acres of marsh with that material that we're going to dredge.
What are some of the challenges that Port Fourchon currently faces, and how are you planning to overcome those challenges?
So obviously, hurricanes are a very large challenge for us, coupled with coastal land loss. So over the years, we've been in the process, both from a Port Authority standpoint as well as our customers, building higher in terms of elevation to the FEMA flood elevations, building stronger to meet demand on wind loads and building regulations, and doing all of those things so that we can be a more resilient facility, a more resilient port for the energy needs of our country, as well as, for the past 27 years, we've advocated for a more resilient highway infrastructure to get to Port Fourchon. And now we have half of an elevated LA1 highway to get to the port. The second half is currently under construction and will be completed by the middle of 2027. And that is critical as we think about when you can't access Port Fourchon for whatever reason, mainly because you can't access it because LA1, which is currently unelevated portion, is over top of water. It has a $46 million daily impact to the energy industry and a $500 million daily impact to the national GDP. So it's critical that more resilient highway infrastructure gets completed, which it is, so that we can have less of an impact when we have storm events and the like.
Is that LA1 project the project you're most excited about, or is there something else that you're really looking forward to adding down at Port Fourchon?
I think it's a multitude of projects that we have continuing to be ongoing. The LA1 project is critical for, having, again, resilient access to the port. When you couple that with our future developmental plans of, dredging 33 feet and allowing us to get a deepwater port facility that we are calling Fourchon Island to do deepwater rig repair, refurbishment, project cargo offloading to include something like offshore wind, as well as decommissioning of old deepwater Gulf of Mexico assets and some fabrication, as well as the potential of an LNG export terminal. The future is bright and we're excited.
Our audience may not have heard of Fourchon Island before. Can you tell us a little more about that project, and do you have a timeline in mind?
Absolutely. So we have applied for our permit for development of Fourchon Island and to build a bridge to get there to replace a former bridge. That permit we should have in hand by the end of this year, and then we can start that developmental process that includes multiple phases of dredging and things along those lines, as well as doing the mitigation work for the impacts to the marsh on that 900-acre area that we believe we can turn into about 550 acres of developed property in its initial phase. So that'll move on as quickly as we possibly can as soon as we get a permit for that development. We're looking at somewhere from a 5 to 8 year developmental process to start.
So that sounds like an opportunity to really create another section of working coast out of just open water.
That's correct. It's all in marsh area, and we're always utilizing every speck of sand beneficially, either for marsh creation or marsh restoration, as well as for industrial development.
Tell us about the work you're doing to protect Louisiana's working coast and also to bring strong jobs to the area.
I'm glad you used that term working coast because certainly that's who Louisiana is. That's our entire way of life is really living and working on the coast. And, as I mentioned before, and I'll mention again, dredging material, that all of that material is like gold to us here in Louisiana because we live on a delta and it's sinking and we're losing the coastline. Every time we dredge, we need to utilize that material beneficially. We've created over 1,200 acres of marsh to the north of the port, dredging our channels to create 800 acres of marsh. The Fourchon Island development is going to allow us to build more marsh as well as develop industrial properties. That Fourchon Island development is going to help us to create the anticipation of about 2,500 new jobs. The port currently has about 5,000 people working on it at any given time. We have direct impact on over 8,100 jobs in our Houma Thibodeau metropolitan statistical area. We impact 11,000 jobs statewide. So all of the things that we continue to do as a port is to create more jobs and attract new investment into our community. And, the energy industry has obviously played a key role in that, along with the fishing industry. And we're happy to continue to serve the energy industry, whatever that energy is and what the source of that energy is.
Chett, in our time today, you have given us a spectacular overview of all of the things that are happening right now to make America's gateway at Port Fourchon alive and thrive. Tell us, as you look ahead to the next 5 to 10 years, what are your goals?
So our goals are absolutely to get that deeper draft, get authorized to 50 feet, get Fourchon Island up and running, and hopefully have an LNG export terminal so that we, Port Fourchon, and our community and our state can continue to grow and provide for those energy needs. We talk a lot in our area about feeding and fueling America with our seafood industry as well. So we're very excited about what the future holds. We believe that Port Fourchon will play a role in whatever offshore energy may come, be it oil and gas, offshore wind, or whatever else those opportunities bring. And we believe in the next 5 to 10 years, we'll see a lot of that continue to grow and blossom, and we'll be right at the center of all of it.
Chett Chiasson, Port Fourchon Executive Director, thank you for joining us on Making Energy.
Thank you for having me today.
Next on Making Energy, learn about a pioneering coastal solution.
The success of those reefs is really going to be measured by the sport fishing activity and by people showing up and saying, hey, this worked, this is great, can we do it again?
Plus, Jason Longclaw, Director of Energy Planning for Louisiana Economic Development and Louisiana's Department of Energy and Natural Resources. He explains the all-of-the-above energy approach.
We've also started to see that these new and emerging energy sectors can directly support our traditional oil and gas sectors.
That's next on Episode 3 of Making Energy, when Louisiana leads Unlocking New Horizons.